Greetings! I am Herbert Erpaderp, and today I'm going to build these 15mm scale Tigers from Plastic Soldier Company. As you can see, they thoughtfully included a painting guide on the back of the box, though you can of course paint them as you see fit. Looking at the 4 sprues that came in this box, you can see they're quite nice and neat, with great detail and quite a few optional parts for different versions of the tank. There are different wheel sets, turret sides, tops, gun mantlets and rear ends, things like that. Fantastic! Also included is a colour-coded guide to help you determine which parts you should use, and an exploded diagram on the back to aid in assembly. The basic hull is quite simple to build, and if you trim the parts neatly you won't need to do any cleanup, though you should still test fit. If cleanup is required, it can be done pretty roughly on the parts that won't be visible, like the lower hull. Then just glue the parts together, as is poorly shown here. Now onto the tracks. This kit unfortunately has the annoying 2-part track sets that most Plastic Soldier Company kits have. They definitely need to be test fit first. The good thing is they don't seem to need a lot of cleanup before being glued on. I found it easiest to glue the top section on first and then attach the bottom one. As far as the actual assembly goes, these ones aren't too bad, though they don't quite match up perfectly, and if you're not careful you'll have ugly gaps in the front and rear of your tracks. Completing the hull is easy. Just consult the diagram and choose the relevant parts for the version of the tank that you've chosen to build. I don't really feel I need to follow this too strictly though. For example, I like the early version's exhaust better than the late version, so I'm using them on my late tanks. I'm sure they would have still been around later in the war anyway. Test fit everything and then glue it all into the appropriate locations. The only thing that might be a little tricky is the correct placement of the hatches. They're cast so they will only fit in the hole one way, but just make sure that you're putting them on the correct side of the tank. Optional is the extra track on the lower front plate, which I think looks cool, so I chose to include it. Turret time! Like the hull, this is easy and includes a few options. There are 2 right side pieces, so choose the appropriate one and glue them together. It might be slightly tricky for some to line up the front portion as there are no guide pins. I added the details to the turret roof before gluing it down. I quite like that there is a choice of turret roofs, even though they're not very different at all. Be sure to get the hatches positioned correctly and then glue them on. Glue the roof on and then we can add the rest of the parts to the turret. I believe the gun mantlet is supposed to be left unglued so the gun can move up and down. I don't really like this, so I glue it in. Be careful that you put it the right way up and keep in mind how you want the gun elevation to look. The gun itself is the part that took the most cleaning up. It might look better if you drill out the end of the barrel, but I couldn't find a small enough bit. The part does have a very small flat spot to guide positioning so the muzzle brake is properly aligned, which is nice. Other optional pieces are this storage box that goes on the back of the turret, and these pieces of spare track. I really like that they're curved to fit the turret. I kind of wish they included a bit more stowage like this, but the amount of spare track you get is pretty cool anyway. Finally, I add the smoke launchers. They're a bit of a pain to clean up owing to their small size, but I don't think the tank looks right without them. You may have noticed that I did not magnetize this tank. This kit has a simple kind of locking turret like you might see on larger scale kits. You could still magnetize it by adding some scrap plastic to support a magnet at the appropriate height in both the turret and the hull, but I don't really see the point. Any magnetic smoke markers you might place on a destroyed tank can sit flat on the hull anyway. Let's compare with Battlefront's Tiger. As you can see, they're pretty close, with the Battlefront version being slightly larger and more chunky looking. Once they're painted, they won't look out of place next to each other on the battlefield. Overall, I'm very happy with this kit. I've had the box sitting around for the longest time and finally got around to building them, and it was quite fun. They don't take a particularly long time to assemble and didn't present me with much of a challenge. The only annoyance was the tracks. These are a little bit cheaper than buying Tigers from Battlefront, so for those who need Tigers on a budget, they're a good buy. And for those who like options in their kits, or maybe want a few versions of the Tiger, they're an excellent buy. I decided to build some of mine with the early exhaust covers and wheels, and some with the late, because variety is nice. Something else I liked is that there's so many bits left over for my bits box. This always makes me happy. I think with a bit of paint, these Tigers will look glorious. Perfect for crushing any allied foes. Hopefully this video has been helpful or interesting for you. Be sure to subscribe if you want to see more. Thanks for watching. Farewell.